Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome once again for the After Hours radio show right here on Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight is going to be another awesome show. We have good friend of the show, author, podcaster, Josh Rutledge coming in talking cryptids for hours 1 and 2. Then we're going to get Drew Banky, our After Hours wrap-up guy, hour 3, along with some more Tales Untold Mysteries. It's going to be another awesome, epic show as always. Definitely glad to be here with you guys tonight. Let's go ahead and see who made it on in first. I think I know who did. Courtesy of Race Fan. We're looking at Race Fan with the gold. We're looking at Frankie B with the silver, and then Kitty Cattywack with the bronze. Thanks for coming on in, guys. I also see Mothman out there. Thanks for coming on in, Mothman. Deb from Sacramento. I see you, Roger Murray, rest in peace. Former President Jimmy Carter passed away age 100, January 6, 1969. U.S. Congressman Jimmy Carter saw a UFO on a trip to California on his Learjet. I recall that. Thanks for keeping us informed, Roger Murray. We do appreciate you. Deidre C., I see you out there. Thanks for coming on in. Karen in the Woo Train, thanks for coming in. Cielo Azul, thanks for coming in. Carl Bittner, thanks for coming on in. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you showing up here tonight. Eternity Eternal as well. Cosmic Joe Chronicles. Jessica S. Male WD-40 getting us lubed. Frankie B. Yeah, it refreshes, so it could be inaccurate tonight. But I thank everyone for coming in. Lavera Lucchini, thanks for coming in. Linda, I see you out there. Thanks for coming in. Lars Jansen. Let's go ahead and get the podcast side started. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Tonight we'll have Josh Rutledge, author, podcaster, as well as Drew Banky and Steve Stockton. Let's get ready to go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial once again to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight, we're broadcasting to you on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Remember, you can access our archives for absolutely free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show, our website, spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SWR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Ron Bubba Football, and oh so much more. Once again, we're going to have an awesome show tonight. We have podcaster, author, and good friend of the show, Josh Rutledge, coming on in. He's a thinker. I'm a thinker. And we're going to have a great conversation tonight, getting into cryptids and paranormal and all of the sorts. So definitely want to go ahead and jump right on into the show as we go ahead and welcome our guest for the night, Mr. Josh Rutledge. Hey, Josh, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Rob. I'm so happy to be on the show finally.
Man, that's what I'm saying. I was like, dude, I haven't had Josh on here yet. This is crazy. Got to get Josh on here, and we're going to be having a great time talking about some cryptids and stuff because, you know, that's really a part of the phenomena I haven't experienced yet. So I always like to lean on the researchers and people who have invested time into that, so it should be great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how have you been?
Fantastic. Had a good holiday. Unfortunately back to work tomorrow, but I guess, it's a blessing that I have a job to go back to work too. So,
yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Great way to look at it. And this is actually the last after hours show of the year. So this is going to be epic. We're going to have a great time. So with that being said, obviously we've been on shows on the same screen together. We've talked, we know each other, but I've never interviewed you. So with this being the first time, I would like to get to know Josh. Kind of, let's go back to the beginning. What got you into this field? What drove you to where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, I have always been interested in, let's say, the fringe elements of life. Like just, I'm a Trekkie. I'm a Star Wars guy. I'm just all around sci-fi guy. We won't talk about Babylon 5, but just, all the kind of space travel stuff, books, movies, TV, whatever you can think. So I've always grown up loving that kind of stuff. But then, as I grew up in life, I started to have experiences that really caused me to question the nature of my reality. And at the time when I was having those experiences and I was doing those questioning, I didn't have this terminology. I didn't have this understanding of things. And so at the time, I just considered it, questioning life, right? But now I really start to realize that it is that questioning of the nature of my reality and how it relates to other people's realities, and because we all perceive things and interact with things differently. So it's it's been that. So it's kind of kicked off for me in 2019 when I had a vivid dream that felt like a recurring memory. Most people who I've shared the story with tend to all agree that it likely was a memory. I was on the podcast with Science Bob and Lala Bright a couple weeks ago. Science Bob interrupted me to say, that's a repressed memory that you're remembering. So I have not driven into that memory other than the dream, but in it, I was standing there holding the hand of a being, a UFO craft hovered overhead, and was told that I was a hybrid and that my life would be different, but also that they had big plans for me. And that pretty much kicked off that. And then a week later, I started doing a podcast with a friend. And those two events pretty much kicked off my crash course, if you will, in the phenomena in all of its shapes and sizes over the last, pretty much since August of 2019.
Wow. Okay. So you're fairly new to the field then, as far because I am as well. But as far as your experiences started happening recently.
Yeah. I mean, I do have some things from when I was a kid, like uh, psychic moments, experiences with well, I'll call them spirits or ghosts, but I'm not entirely sure that that's what they were. I never saw them, but they would interact with things in my grandparents' house. Turn on lights, turn on the pipe organ, or not pipe organ, but the organ in the living room, play some notes occasionally, things like that. So again, I think that stuff is mostly attributed to spirits, but it could be ET in cloaking suits. I have no idea, um, so some of that stuff when I was a kid, but really, I would say that the bulk of it has been since 2019, with some pretty profound experiences since then.
Wow, it's great that you actually talked about, potentially some of these things being ETs in cloaking suits. That's a newer one for me, and it makes a lot of sense. And we'll kind of get into that a little down the line. But what, when you started having these experiences, I know you had the repressed memory, and that would be something to kind of send up a red flag as far as what you might be looking at. But what was, if you could give a compelling experience that just brought it home for you? It was like, yeah, there's definitely something going on.
I mean, I think any experience that you have that you share with someone else and they are able to corroborate the same story, just from a researcher's perspective, is a stronger case than those that you just have by yourself. And so for me, given that I'm kind of an analytical researcher kind of oriented person and logic based, and I needed to have that kind of corroboration. For me, the experience was in May of 2020, when I saw a UFO probably no more than 50 to 100 feet above me in my backyard when I lived in Kentucky. And even though I only saw it for maybe 10 seconds, just a bright light, maybe the brightness of a full moon, but not maybe the size of a quarter if you held a quarter at arm's length, that big in the sky, and just sat there, no noise, no sound. Like, it was eerily quiet. Let's say there was no animal sounds, no insect sounds, just that white light. And then it shot straight up in the sky, leaving kind of like a teardrop cone below it. And my friend, who at the time I did a podcast with, was standing next to me, and he witnessed it too. And we were able to, say, did you just see that? And kind of compare what we each saw. And again, that corroborating, testimony really helped to drive home that, I had just experienced something, and so had he.
Being that you are as far as experiences go, you are newer, they're more recent. I can kind of align with you on this. And, thinking back, like you were talking about being a child, and there'd be weird things that would happen that you would not necessarily attribute to there actually being a phenomenon, but just spooky, scary stuff. When I think about that, going back as a kid, how many times, when you think something's under your bed or something's in the closet, and you swear by it, and parents kind of write it off in the moment, how many of those instances were actually real? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Back now?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that especially the more and more that I start to understand the primal side of our body, and how it reacts to stimuli, that feeling that you get, the hair in the back of your neck standing up, that kind of cold chill that runs up your spine, that's your body. Your body's responding to sensory stimuli that your analytical brain is factoring out or filtering out, but your body somehow senses it, and is trying to warn you to be prepared to fight, flee, or whatever the third one is. I think freeze, I think, is the other one. But so, yeah, I mean, I do think about that quite a bit, that how much of the time does our body warn us about things that maybe we can't necessarily see with our eyes because we're looking for an analytical, if you will, sight of whatever it might be. I was just talking to my daughters the other day about the possibility that, we actually see things all the time that our brain just filters out because it doesn't fit a programmed an image that we have seen before, and thus, it doesn't have a frame of reference. So, like if it saw an 8-armed creature standing in your driveway, would you actually see an 8-armed creature if you have no frame of reference to process that against? Or would your brain basically remove some of those arms and you would just see this odd looking 2-legged, 2-armed thing? Maybe that's why so much of the things that we encounter look humanoid, because that's what our brain has the closest frame of reference to compare things to. And so it basically filters out those extra appendages or extra eyes or whatever the case may be. But yeah, 100% agree that there are likely times that we see things that, or our body senses that they're there, that we rationalize away, when in all actuality, there was something really there.
And the wild part about that is because we are more recent experiencers, that means we were adults when we came to this realization, which means in some cases, either you have kids, you have nieces and nephews, or you have just younger ones that you are in contact with that will come to you and say, hey, there's something scary in my room. And being the adult, prior to your experiences, you may have also laughed it off and said, hey, it's okay, just go to bed, nothing to see here. But as you are now on this side of it, I think we take those things more seriously. I've even said on a show, like if your kid or if a kid you're looking over comes and says that, just go check it out. Because now that we know that there is something to this other side, there could very well possibly be exactly what that child is saying, sitting right there in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just a whole nother impact now. What is your feeling on what is, if you had to 10,000 foot view, look down at the phenomenon, what are you thinking or feeling about it as a whole and as its relation to each other potentially?
Yeah, I do think, and the podcast that I started with my friend, we started out as called Fearscape, but it soon changed and it actually became known as the Convergence Enigma. And it was based on that premise that all aspects of the phenomena, whether it be, alien or UFO or cryptid or ghosts or the occult or whatever the case may be, that they're all somehow tangentially related, that they either appear together. This kind of came to me when I was researching the case of the poltergeist activity that happened in 1977 in a borough outside of London, and the Enfield case is what it's called, the Enfield poltergeist. And so when I was researching that poltergeist case, I just was curious if there was any other activity outside of poltergeist activity that happened around the same time. And guess what? There was. There were UFO sightings. There were cryptid sightings. There were fairy sightings, so on and so forth. That all happened along the same area as this Enfield poltergeist. And so that really got me thinking that, maybe it is a matter of all of these things are somehow related to each other. Either when one is happening, multiple are also happening. And if you happen to experience those, consider yourself lucky. Or is one or multiple happening, but they're only presented to the person whom which will receive the best message based on the experience they have. And what I say by that is, if the phenomenon, in my opinion, is geared towards providing you a redirection, if you will, back onto a path that you're supposed to be on. You wandered off in the woods, in the woods of life. You've wandered off, and you need to be put back on the path that you were really supposed to be on when you arrived here. And so you have these strange experiences that cause you to reevaluate where you are in life, and again, the nature of your reality. And in doing so, it kind of puts you back on that path that you're supposed to be on. Well, if I saw a UFO, but you saw a Bigfoot, maybe that's because for me, seeing a UFO was the appropriate stimuli to put me back on that path. But for you seeing a Bigfoot, that was your appropriate stimuli to put you back on that path. And so if all the phenomena somehow related in that way, where it's somehow intentional towards directing us in our life path movements, then it makes sense that it might appear or manifest itself as different aspects of the phenomena depending on who is viewing it.
That makes a lot of sense.
I said a lot there.
No, that's great. Actually, it makes a lot of sense as we try to figure this out, because people have said, we talk about the multi-dimensional aspect of it. Now, for me, coming into this field, multi-dimensional was so far off for me. I was trying to put it in a nice little box to make it make sense and see how this would make more sense to think of before just literal space travel from one place to another. And I'm starting to lean more multidimensional just for what you just said, because you can experience all these different parts of the phenomena, and people are in a short period of time. So that could potentially mean maybe all that stuff that we're seeing in relation to the phenomena is going on in that other dimension over there. And it's just like we're getting that moment to peer into it. And so we're having all those experiences with cryptids and UFOs and all those different things. Maybe they do all exist, maybe not in the same dimension together, but maybe it's somehow we're, this is what I like, an analogy I like to use. In the 80s, if anybody remembers the 80s, you used to have cable boxes. And if you didn't have a subscription to a channel, you could hit the little button. If you kept hitting it, it would kind of clear up the image for you so that you could watch what was going on. Some people will get that reference, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. Like maybe for that moment, we're hitting the AB button and getting a glance into that other dimension. I mean,
so
it sounds far-fetched.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it, and this is also kind of an older reference, but some people may get it, is, you remember the overhead projectors that they used in school where it was like a light bulb shining up from below that, and there was like a lens over top, and it would catch that image and it would project it onto the wall or whatever. And your teachers or whatever probably had clear pieces of, plastic paper or whatever that they would do math problems on or whatever they were doing to try to instruct. So the way I think about it is if you take one of those thin layers and you lay it down, and let's say it's a shade of, and I'm just going to use an arbitrary color here, but let's say it's a shade of yellow. And then you lay another layer down and it's a shade of red. And then you lay another layer down and it's a shade of green, all the way up through the rainbow. But one of those layers is clear and it's somewhere in the middle. Where we exist is that clear layer. And occasionally we get bleed through from the colors either below us or above us onto what's being projected for us. And so this is kind of getting into that simulation theory, I think, that a lot of people are keen on, but it's what's being projected for us. We get that bleed through. And so sometimes we may feel like we're interacting with those other pieces of the phenomenon, but really they just wandered into what's being projected for us in our reality.
I knew I liked you, Josh. I knew I liked you. I love that analogy. That's perfect. It's perfect. And those are called overhead projectors, just so anyone wants to know, back in the day. But yeah, that's perfect. That makes so much sense. Visually, I could see that, and it definitely makes a lot of sense. So, if that was the case, and when we sit and try to logically think through this process here, it just makes a lot of sense, and it answers a lot of questions when we talk about the cryptid world, because in those cases, people aren't really getting evidence or proof or receipts. They're not able to bring those back. They're not able to get videos or photos in a lot of cases. So, but then but we do get a lot of videos and photos of UFOs. So that's where I'm kind of torn in between. Maybe UFOs are actually separate from the cryptid stuff. Maybe all the cryptid stuff is related because they have the same characteristics. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So the way that I've also, so to stick with my projector analogy, I think that for us as sentient life, let's call it that, that we have layers as well. And we have a physical layer, but we also have layers that represents our spiritual body, our energy body, our emotional body, etc. And those different layers that we have can interact with those different dimensional layers in a slightly different way. And so when you think about Bigfoot sightings, often people will smell them, or they'll hear them, or they'll hear, let's say, the effects of them. You know, branches breaking, knocks, things like that. But I've actually talked to some people who have laid eyes on, visual eyes on as well. But I would have to, you know, for me, the question would be, were you seeing it with your physical eyes, or were you seeing it with your third eye? And if you're seeing it with your third eye, and the only way really to test that would be, you know, when you're having a sighting experience, just to close your eyes, which nobody is going to do because they don't want to miss out on seeing it, right? But if you're seeing it with your third eye, then that's your energy body or your spiritual body that's potentially interacting with that other dimension. But it all gets kind of correlated and translated by the brain, and so you then have to break those experiences down into the physical space, because that's the layer that you most inhabit in the way you think about and process through daily existence. You know, I can tell you that I have seen things that I know I have seen with my third eye. My visual eye is not catching, but so those things I'll never have a photo of, because photos and videos translate to visual eye perception and not necessarily third eye perception, right? And so things like Bigfoot or other cryptids, maybe they do interact with us, but in another dimensional layer that only an aspect of our existence is able to interact with.
That makes a lot of sense too, because you know we have anomalous things in the sky that are only picked up in certain spectrums. So just a regular camera wouldn't capture that, even though it's there and you can see it through a different spectrum. So that makes total sense, man. Yeah, I like that. We're actually making some progress here. So what we're going to do, we have about 15 seconds to go before we go to our first break of the night, which has come pretty quick, guys. So make sure you don't go anywhere as we finish the conversation, continue, I should say, with Josh Rutledge here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Stay right here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear. And Resonant says that makes no sense. No, I don't know. Resonant, talk to me. I know you like to go against the grain sometimes, but I'd like to know your perspective on that, because I think looking at it through, you know, essentially your mind is allowing you to peer through into that other dimension. That makes sense there, because if it's just that, it would be something you wouldn't capture in reality, right? Because you're seeing it through your mind's eye. So I could see that. That makes sense. Tell me how it doesn't make sense, though, Resident. I would be interested to know.
When I see a comment there from Cello Azul, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the first part incorrectly, but you know, as far as them interacting with physical space, I could see where maybe our physical space, even doors, houses, everything echoes in different layers of existence. That's why maybe spirits are able to interact with physical space as well, because it echoes into their realm of existence, but maybe not as deep into those different layers of existence that exist out there. Maybe there's 12 layers of existence, and physical matter only echoes into 3 of the 12 or something to that effect. So spirits can interact with them. Bigfoot cryptids can, but other things can't. I don't know. I mean, it's all worth, I think, investigating or thinking about.
Absolutely. Magneticus, thanks for coming on in. Jessica Lee, thank you for showing up tonight. Appreciate you coming in. Miss Catherine Jones, thanks for coming in as well. Who else do we have? Ann Joanne. Hey, Ann Joanne, thanks for coming on in. Brown Dwarf, thanks for showing up here tonight. Rachel, I see you out there. Thanks for coming in. Let's see who else. Joe Monk, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you. And Resonant, we'll put in the chat earlier. The night that Kevin and I saw the beings, they were testing us, though I didn't realize it at the time. One came to the door but struggled to open it, but maybe getting inside wasn't their plan. What did those beings look like, Resonant? Because there have been some beings that for whatever reason can't manifest themselves inside of houses like some people say. Some have to physically come through the door, and there are examples of that in historical ufology. So if you could give a description of what those beings look like, I'd just be interested to see if it aligns with any of the historical cases. I think that's a key there. A lot of people, most people say these things just materialize in your house and they take you through walls. But there's instances of ones that seem purely physical in nature, as far as they can't get through a barrier. They get through barriers the same way we do. And
I'm not saying that all the phenomena, right, is non-physical. I'm just saying that some may not be, and that's why we interact with it and perceive it differently.
Oh yeah,
there are certainly physical ETs, or aliens or ultra terrestrials that visit us, and they interact with us in a very physical way. But I've also read a lot of cases that sounds like astral projection abduction, where they're actually taking the spiritual body or the energy body and leaving the physical body behind. In those cases, I can see where they would be interacting with it on a completely different level of existence.
We'll get into that, because I've covered that, and I feel that way too. I've asked certain people, abductees, if they felt like it was a physical abduction or abduction of the consciousness, because I think both of those probably happen. But we'll definitely bring that up after the break. And let me see anything else in here. Yeah, Resonant says they were definitely physical, aside from being anthropomorphic. They did not resemble a human. The face wasn't like us at all. What color were they in tone of skin? I would like to know, because there's a specific type that I'm talking about, and I don't want to give it up. I want someone to say it before me so I could say, yeah, that's actually the same ones I was looking at. We'll get into that further, Resonant. I'll check your messages throughout the show. And Corey, thank you so much. You the man, Mr. Rob G. Keep that needle moving. Always, Corey. That's what we do. That's we're not doing that, then we're not doing our jobs, sir, or ma'am. That's what I would say, and hopefully other people feel the same way. We got about 10 seconds to go here. All right, everyone. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Coming back with our guest here, podcaster, author Josh Rutledge, and has affiliations with MUFON. We'll be getting into talking about that as well. But make sure that you understand that you can watch anything that you missed tonight by jumping into archives. They're absolutely free. youtube.com/spacedoutradio. We would appreciate you catching up on what you missed, jumping back into the conversation here. So, yeah, Josh, we were kind of getting into the dimensions here, and potentially maybe you were saying, essentially paraphrasing, that when you're seeing these things out there, you're looking through the mind's eye, which makes sense. And because I was going to say, you have a lot of cryptid researchers that actually go out and look for these things. And if they're not physical, and if there's some sort of glitch in the matrix, then you would catch them in that moment. But it would make more sense that if you are seeing them through your mind's eye, that your ability that you have is allowing you to peer through that dimension. Would you agree with that, or how would you kind of position that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that people probably see a lot of things with their mind's eye, and because they're not either aware or tuned in to notice that's maybe something they're seeing differently, they either dismiss it or they just assume it was something that they saw, right, with their physical eyes. But I also think that it's very possible that, and I'm going to say this in a little different way, is that these things could be physical. I want to make sure I'm not saying that what I'm saying is everything is not physical in nature. I'm saying they could be physical, but just they even, may have some sort of a natural camouflage ability that allows them to stay hidden again from the physical eyes, but we can somehow see them with our third eye, see their aura, their energy field, whatever the case may be. Because like I said, I have seen and heard and talked to people who have seen them, trekking up through the woods and describe them how other people have described them. So it is definitely interesting. I think what will be really a good way to test it would be to have everybody get together, do like a big, almost like a CE5 meditation, but instead of calling down, whatever's above, reach out to whatever may be in the area with you already and see if you have, a similar, a cryptid experience type situation where you could actually make contact with things in that way and maybe see them with your third eye or even with your physical eye.
And I'm just thinking through this as we're talking, and maybe even also, even to take it a little further, maybe what we're doing is just like with those anomalous orbs and things that are in the sky that we pick up like on psionics cameras that we can't see with the naked eye. Maybe it's the same thing there. Maybe if we had some, psionics or some other glasses that allowed us to see through a spectrum, almost like X-ray glasses, X-ray vision, that if something was cloaked, that you could see it because it's in our physical world. You're not necessarily seeing through dimensional walls, but
Right.
You're seeing something in our dimension that may just be cloaking itself.
Well, I mean, the fact remains that, humans have great eyesight, but they only see a small spectrum of, everything that's there to be seen. I've talked about this, I think, on Spaced Out Radio. One of the times was talking about how we have 3 cones in our eyes, right, that allow us to see everything that we see. People who are colorblind only have 2 cones. But the butterfly has 5 cones. So imagine what it must see compared to what we see. So it's very possible that there are things that are right now, even in the very room that you're sitting in, standing there watching you do this show, that you can't see or perceive of because of the limitations of your eyes. But maybe we have the means, like we do with, thermal cameras and IR cameras and things like that, to be able to enhance those spectrums that our physical eyes can't see and comprehend, so that we can perceive and see into those other areas. But even with our advances in technology and cameras that we have made so far, maybe they are still limited even to be able to see into the spectrum of existence that some of these creatures may live or exist in.
Yeah, and that's why it was so interesting when you brought up earlier the potential for, some of these things to be ETs cloaking themselves. Because I don't know if you're familiar with all the experiences I've had in the short 2 years, but one of them was a shadow person. And I talked to a few paranormal investigators about the shadow person. I showed the photo, as well, which I can probably dig up here in a moment. But the shadow person, once they saw it, they were just first of all shocked, and then second, I get a lot of the times that they don't feel it's paranormal. They feel like it's more extraterrestrial.
Mm.
So when thinking about that, then it's like, okay, wow, can shadow people then essentially be ET's cloaking, or maybe coming out of cloak? Maybe you're able to see kind of through that layer there temporarily. Now, the other thing that makes me lean into it is just like you stated, they could be sitting here watching you do the show right next to you. One thing that makes me feel that way and kind of lean with that is that I filmed these orbs that were in our side house. The only thing they were picked up on were our ring cameras, and they were just floating through the air, floating all through the room. We went in there as it was happening live, as we're looking on the phone at these things floating, walk in, and we can't see them with our eyes. And it made me feel like, first of all, the orbs were alive themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, is this a way? Is this like maybe an eye into surveillance, essentially? Something that's sent down and able to kind of spy on what it is that we're doing down here without them physically manifesting themselves down here.
I mean, it's possible, I guess. My thought on, because I have also on my own ring type cameras captured some orbs that seem to move with a purpose, right? It's a lot of people dismiss it, I think, as dust. But in the times that I captured the orbs that I captured, number one, no AC unit or fan was on. It's like there was no air circulation happening in the house. And number two, you could see them come through a wall, kind of flash along in a straight line, leaving like a trail behind them, and then go through and pass through another wall, right? So, I think out of the gate, sometimes people might film things or snap photos, and it might in fact be dust particles. But I think a lot of times we see orbs that are legitimate, and I think it's pretty much time that people start coming around to the idea that there could be microscopic orbs that are sentient life forms, or some form of intelligence that we just can't comprehend or process. So that being said, I think that it's very possible that at a minimum, whether they're sent with some sort of a spying type mentality, but at a minimum, there are things interacting with us because they are interested in us, right? Whether they be interested in us as individuals, or interested us in our spirit, our soul, or whatever the case may be. So they're interested in us in some way. And so because of that, I think it's I'm going to use a word, but interesting to see how they interact with us. Lala Bright, I don't know if you've had her on your show or not yet, but I know she's been on Space Out Radio. But she's got some videos out there of those orbs in her room, and she can hold out her hand and they will interact with her hand. So again, they're interacting with us. They're interested in us in some way for some reason. So we should probably just stop dismissing them as being just dust particles.
And I'll even take it a step further, because when I had my situation, I was actually doing a live show when it happened. And I kept getting this call through to my phone, and I'm like, who is this? So eventually my girl comes into the studio while I'm during a break. And she says, look at this. And she shows me the ring camera video, and I see the orbs flying around. I'm like, oh my God, go ahead and edit that, because she had gone in there herself to investigate, and it shows her come into the room as the thing's floating around. She's looking for it. She can't find it, but it's still there, present, floating around. Now, I went immediately after that show and researched other cases where people have caught these. And I found a lot of them where these orbs are being picked up, and they do seem like they have a purpose. They do seem to be intelligent, for whatever reason. And when I say intelligent, I know some people may hear that, skeptics especially, and be like, well, what are you talking about, intelligent? If you saw one of these things, you'd understand. I won't say intelligent, I'll say lifelike. Like there's a life to these things. Now, I along my research, I found a video where there was a dog that was in the house by itself, and the orb flew one way. The dog kind of walked in the frame right in front of the camera. The orb went right back the other way across his face, and he turned in the direction of the orb immediately. So it let me know, okay, these may be able to be detected by animals. Another video I saw with the same type of orbs was one in a person's garage. And if you know Ring cameras, some of them have two-way intercom on there.
Yeah.
So the person who's watching this thing live talks through the intercom and he says, "Hey." And as he said, "Hey," the orb reacted to sound. And it was crazy. I'm like, okay, well, some of these things are reacting to sound. Some of these things are being seen by animals that obviously have better vision than we do. So it just kind of solidifies the fact that these things are here and are real.
Yeah, I mean, I think also that it's, I think sometimes we, think about intelligent life as being like us, right? We anthropomorphize whatever we're going to encounter, but they could be as small. I think Men in Black, the one with Tommy Lee Jones and like that. I think the ending where the alien takes a marble that's like a galaxy and flips it across the floor, right? I mean, that's, for all we know, we're just some tiny part of somebody else's bigger universe. And bigger doesn't always necessarily mean size, right? So I see you're showing it here. I mean, that's pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I captured. He wasn't moving around the room like that. It just flew through the room, but that's exactly the type of thing that I've captured before.
And for the radio audience, it's a Ring camera shot of a living room. No one's in the living room. It's completely pitch black dark. And this camera is capturing this floating orb that looks like a smoke ring almost, and it's moving like it's alive, essentially. So to give it context here, because that's not actually the one. That one is cool, but there's this one here, which actually shows that a little better. I want to make sure that we show that here. Let's see. 12, 23. Let's try this one here. It's another video, same object floating around, a lot closer to the camera. And it is appearing to almost go through the cabinets that are on the wall. And it is literally just floating through the room. And we've captured this. This triggered our Ring camera, actually. That's how we got the footage. It triggered it. So it's just another thing that shows you that, those things are real and they're there all the time and you can't see them.
Yeah.
Just like you stated, there's a lot of things we can't see. Just put it into context, like Wi-Fi signals in just all those invisible signals that are all around us. If we could see those, we would see a world cluttered with noise, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this is part of the noise. You also mentioned them maybe being alive themselves. Talk more about that, because I know I've seen some things about these plasma life forms, I guess is what they're calling them. And essentially they're feeling like these things might be like upper atmosphere sort of objects and that they are actually alive. What have you heard about that?
So I have heard about the plasma life form theory, and it's usually, I think, used to explain some of the lights in the sky type things that, like, they exist maybe at a much higher level of the atmosphere, and kind of like, as we see in our own oceans, right? That deeper life forms, when it goes dark, they come to the shallower waters to feed. Maybe these plasma beings or whatever come to lower in orbit or lower in the atmosphere to do various activities towards different times of the day or the night. And so maybe that attributes to some of the stuff that we're seeing. As far as those orb, like the one you just showed, one of the things that I like to think about as possibility is that they're spirits, ghosts, for more common vernacular. But a spirit or a ghost, however you want to call it, doesn't, when they manifest themselves to appear to us as human, I think that's a purposeful action they're taking on their part, but they don't always have to do so. I think that sometimes they can just move around as what we perceive as orbs. And maybe that's why we oftentimes catch them on night vision or nighttime cameras, because that's typically the camera technology that has been used to capture spirits or ghosts in paranormal research. So it's very possible that they're floating around, but only when they feel like they're in the presence of a human do they actually take some sort of a human-based shape to make it easier for us to accept what we're seeing.
Yeah, I can get with that. I can definitely get with that. It definitely feels like there, like you stated, there's some purpose behind them. So whether they are essentially spirits manifesting themselves, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this is part of what the thought process that I've gone through, just trying to make this make sense. Because it started off for me with UFOs. I had 47 UFOs I caught. Epic video. Right after that was the shadow person picture that we captured. Mm. Right after that was a lady that walked up to our door in the middle of the day asking to come in and use our shower at like 2 PM. Felt like Black Eyed Kids, truthfully. Then after that, we had in the middle of the day again, 1 or 2 o'clock, phantom knocking, clear as day. Someone knocking that picked up also on the Ring camera, but no one was at the front or back door. After that, we had, in the middle of all this, we had physical footsteps on the roof at 2 o'clock in the morning, boots walking across the roof. We had the orbs that you just saw right there. And then we had, I know I'm forgetting something. That's about it. But my whole thing was, is I'm looking at it like, wow, I just experienced all these different parts of the phenomena, paranormal, extraterrestrial, and this is my thought process. But I listened to a podcast where a guy was talking about his experience with footsteps on the roof, and he was attributing those footsteps to previous abduction encounters that he had, him and his wife. And then I'm like, whoa, okay. Could it all be extraterrestrial related and not all these different? What's more likely, that I'm experiencing every part of the phenomena, or is at this one specific location, or am I experiencing the same part of the phenomena? Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
It's also very possible that a really good friend of mine, Deb Shakti, uses this analogy of that once you've had an experience, it's like you're tuned in, like a radio dial, like you're tuned in now. And so once you're tuned in, you start to pick up on all these other frequencies, right? And so you start to experience all the different things that before were already happening around you. You just weren't tuned in to be able to experience them. So maybe the footsteps on the roof happened every 5 days. And again, you just didn't know it. Or even your brain, you may have heard it and your brain just processed it out because it was, like you said, maybe it was noise, right? That the brain just processes out. But once you've had kind of that big, I almost attribute it to like a ritual, right? It's that initiation experience. Once you've had that initiation experience, UFO sighting, Bigfoot, big hairy beast, Mothman, whatever the case may be, once you have it though, and you, I think, turn the corner of accepting it as some aspect of existence that you don't understand, you tune in, you flip the switch internally to say, okay, I'm open now to experiencing everything that I've been blocking out to this point. And then all aspects of the phenomena are open. They're free game. They're there for you to experience, all, I think, with the hopes of helping you to process through how big life is beyond a kind of everyday, go to work, go to school, come home, fix dinner, whatever, existence.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it's like, once you found that frequency, you can stay within that range essentially and pick up things that are coming through in that frequency. That makes a lot of sense as well. What would be, as we got about, let's see, 2 minutes left till break. I wanted to get into the whole consciousness aspect, and because I feel like when it comes to abductions, first of all, I feel like consciousness is the thing that holds all these different pieces together. Like, it is the framework of the phenomena. Now, abductees, and I would ask this question because I wondered if an abductee, if they had a camera on them all night, these people who are repeatedly abducted, would they see themselves being abducted, or would they likely see themselves sleeping through the night, meaning that they either astral traveled or their consciousness was abducted? What's your view on that?
It's possible. It's also very possible because time lapse is usually a thing that they would just see like a click in the camera view, like their body would one time be in one position and then the camera would switch frames and they would be in a different position. I don't think, a lot of times people talk about missing time, but I think it's also possible that it's reversed, right? It's almost like a 20 and back situation where they take you for 10 hours, but for you experience it as 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. I like that. So essentially, in a situation like that, camera probably wouldn't work then, because you'd see essentially, like you said, a glitch,
right?
Where you move.
Like one time you're sleeping, you're facing the left, and then the next frame you're facing the right. You just say, "I just rolled over," but maybe in that period of time, you were actually abducted and they brought you back.
Okay, we got about 30 seconds. What is your view on consciousness? And we'll continue this after the break.
You're going to ask me that question with 30 seconds to go?
Just a quick,
big picture. I think it's bigger. In fact, I've been told that it's bigger than anything that anybody has really ever comprehended before.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a big rabbit hole to jump down, and we're going to actually do that going into the next break. It's just, I always tell people, and I always also have to recalibrate myself, and I think that's very important, because if having so many experiences and then hearing people talk about theirs, you could be swayed if you allow yourself to be one side or the other, where you're just all in as a believer, or you just don't believe what you're hearing. And I think it's very important to still stay middle of the road, which is what I try to do even as we talk through these situations. But we're going to go ahead and get even deeper into this right after the break, as we talk consciousness right here with Josh Rutledge on the After Hours radio show right here on Spaced Out Radio. Don't go anywhere.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear, and we're off camera for 5 minutes, so I'll see you in a minute.
All right.
everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 2 already with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, and our guest tonight, Josh Rutledge. We'll be getting right back into the talk here in about 30 seconds before we come back from radio. Make sure, if you haven't, take some time and hit that like button tonight. Did awesome last night. Got a lot of likes. Let's go ahead and put some of those numbers up tonight, if possible. It would be greatly appreciated. Noah Hyde 72, thanks for coming in. Do you see out there Jessica Lee? Thanks for showing up. Linda, thanks for coming on in as well. And here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 2 with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, and our guest, Josh Rutledge, podcaster, author. Have some dealings with MUFON. We're going to actually talk about that this hour, I promise. As we go ahead and get right back into it, remember, if you missed any of this awesome conversation, jump in our archives. Absolutely free. YouTube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. So, Josh, right for the break, had you give a quick little summation of consciousness. Obviously, we didn't get to go there. Let's go ahead and get into that right now. What do you feel like? What does consciousness mean to this entire conversation in your eyes?
So I actually have a graphic, if I could share.
Definitely.
And I just this is something that I've had before, but I've whipped it together in our break there. Just a minute. So let me present this, and however this works, we'll just do share screen.
Don't see it yet, but as you for the radio audience, we will
I'll try to do a good job of describing it.
Exactly. Okay, here we go. It's up on screen.
All right. So this is maybe going to be a lot to digest, but the way I understand it is that we always think about the life that we're living and there being, a soul associated to it. And then that soul is kind of related back to source, God, whatever you want to call it. But in all actuality, the soul exists, and from that soul is, there's way more soul fragments than what's represented here, but all these different soul fragments or segments that all are related to all the different existences that you are living. And so the way that this breaks down from a visual perspective is you have source at the top, source connects to soul in the middle. Soul then, or whatever you want to call it, your soul, your spirit, your katra, whatever, connects down and breaks off into all these different soul fragments, and each soul fragment is associated with a life that you're living. And so consciousness comes into play here in the way that you think about the soul fragment as well as the overall soul. And so when you think about consciousness and you say, well, consciousness is my awareness of the existence that I am living. So you're aware that you're living a life. But I think the next step in consciousness is becoming aware that you are just one of the multitude of existences that are being experienced by your higher self, your oversoul, your bigger soul, whatever you want to call it. And what is the purpose of all of those different existences that are being lived is to provide enough experiential information back to your oversoul, your higher self. And so when it comes to consciousness and the involvement of consciousness in our individual lives, it's really to ensure that we are having the best experiences that we can have. Best and always meaning good, but the best experiences that we can have so that we can take that translated information and pass it along to our higher self so that the conglomerate soul, if you will, the all-encompassing soul can grow in its understanding of the nature of all reality. Not all the time are these kind of breakout existences people. Sometimes they're animals. Sometimes they're elements. Like I've heard of people who have do regressions and they see that they were a cloud or that they were a star or a planet. So the existence is vast across all of the physical as well as outside of the physical.
Okay, I like that. I like that. And the explanation as well for the radio audience is essentially he has a Venn diagram up with source at the top. Off of that comes soul, and below that are those soul fragments he's speaking of. And then from the soul fragments goes to one individual person, and each one has their soul fragments, which attach up to the soul, which go to source at the top of the ladder. Now, with that being said, let me ask you this then. Looking at the diagram, I feel like where soul is being represented, is that the part of a person in your eyes that you'd consider being that inner voice, right? The voice of reasoning, the gut feeling. Does all that exist in soul as you have it represented here?
It exists in soul fragment because soul fragment is just a part of soul. It's the way I reference it is like if I gave you a bowl of water and said, give me one drop, would you be able to? And how would you differentiate one drop from another? The soul fragments are the soul. It's a reduced, not even reduced. I can't even come up with the word terminology wise. It's a different representation of soul, but it is a portion of soul which exists in its entirety as if it were soul, exhibiting or experiencing life within each individual existence.
Okay. All right. So then what is the fabric of consciousness, then this entire image represents consciousness, this graph.
Yes.
So how does that for you bleed into other parts of the phenomena? Like for instance, the paranormal, cryptid world, because I feel like they're all interwebbed within consciousness. So how does this play into those aspects?
So again, kind of what I started out at the beginning with is that I think a lot of this stuff is exists for the purpose of, so let's pick this person here, this person in the middle, fourth one from the left. They've, again, they are you, right? But you don't necessarily understand or interact with them in that way. But they've started their life with an intended path to follow. But along the way, they've gotten off track. And so they need to have some sort of a experience that causes them to reevaluate and get back on track. So either we, collectively, the soul, helps to manifest that experience in hopes that it will direct this person back on track, or through some sort of a collaboration of existences across the span of, I don't have a better word other than existence. There is a collaboration to help produce an experience that would help that person move back on track. And I know that this is all very hard to articulate as well as grasp probably, but so when I say is the phenomena exists as a guidepost on your path in life. And if you've gotten off on the wrong trail in your path in life, the phenomena steps in to help guide you onto the path that you're meant to be on.
Okay. I can see that. And then obviously, like you said, it's so complicated to kind of delve into because fully there's things about the about consciousness that we still don't fully grasp or understand, period, regardless how much book work you do on the subject. There is a part of it that and I like how you have source there, because I do feel like consciousness ties into just the what I like to call the energy that powers the universe. I feel like that is source in this case. And I feel like that everything is then indirectly connected into that source, which is how we animate our bodies or how our bodies are animated. Conscious things and unconscious things, I think. But then I feel like, and then maybe this graph does represent that too, because essentially when we talk about cryptids, we're talking about another form of life, essentially, as we know it. And then same thing with extraterrestrials, and then even paranormal, which you would figure is former life, but I guess it's just life in general, because it is the energy that creates everything and goes back to source. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Yes. And I would also say that, to your point that you just made, that afterlife is still life, right? It's life that exists in a different way of living, or, we have to really think about, I think, how we define life and living. Is it that it breathes? Is it that it, breathes? Is it that it eats? Whatever, how we define life and living. But, all of these things, spirits, cryptids, or whatever the case may be, likely fall into that bucket, even though we don't necessarily, as a society, as a scientific society, we haven't been able to capture one, catalog it, and put it on Wikipedia, right? And so therefore we dismiss it as potentially being outside of the normal, hence the word paranormal. But yet it very well may be. I mean, stories going back in our recorded history, which in the grand scheme of the world and the age of the universe is really, really a blip in time. But stories recorded in our recorded history talk about things, that can't be explained. I mean, there are freaking unicorns in the Bible, if you want to go that route. So there's all this stuff in the world that we as a society were willing to talk about and share with each other and write stories about and sing songs about. And then all of a sudden the Industrial Revolution happened, and we all thought we were smarter than everything that we had been learned or thought about before. And it kind of, we just dismissed it as, folklore, or, scary stories you tell your kids, or crazy people, or whatever the case may be. But in all actuality, it's been around for a long time, and it will continue to be around. And I think the longer we go as a society rejecting this part of ourselves, the further and further we're going to move away from the kind of true nature of what we're supposed to be.
Funny you say that. I literally just I say it all the time, but I literally just said that last night, where I feel like just human beings, and kind of one of the points that I brought up was technology, right? Because the kids, and I always point to area school kids, because I think that's the most epic, one of the most epic sightings ever. But in a lot of cases, it's communicated to human beings that technology is bad. And a lot of people don't really get that. They're looking at it on the surface, like, no, technology is actually a benefit, because it simplifies the process for us as we go through life. But then when you think about it in the way that you're speaking about, is that, it's literally something that takes us further and further away from being natural beings, from nature itself, and which is the essence of what I think consciousness is. So it's kind of a strange situation, but I think what we will find out in the end is that reality, or whatever we think reality is, isn't actually reality. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even close to what it is that we're going to discover about consciousness as thing goes. Because I think we have superpowers. I think we have the ability to do so many things that we just don't know, that haven't been unlocked. If you want to talk about that, what would some of those abilities be?
I mean, I think that I know that we have the ability to heal ourselves. There's a book back here behind me, a couple actually by Dr. Joe Dispenza, that talks about the power of, healing yourself. Just a redirection of energy, repurposing of energy. I think that we are limited to we are only limited by the limits we place on ourselves. Does that mean that if you believe that you can fly, that I think you should jump off a building. No. But I think that there are steps towards making this life bigger and better than what you have been told most of your life are the restrictions that exist within it. And there's ways to do that in a safe, controlled way that doesn't end the purpose of your existence, which is to have meaningful experiences. And so there's, the healing aspect, the ability, being able to heal others, and I'm not even talking about Reiki. Reiki exists, and I'm a Reiki practitioner, but I have quickly found that the healing energy that Reiki enables exists everywhere all the time. And so there are a lot of times that I can pass that healing energy on to friends and family without invoking Reiki or saying the words and doing the symbols, because again, it's the only limits that are there are the ones that I place on myself. If I say that I have to have Reiki in order to heal people, then that's what'll have to be in place, because I've exhibited that limit on myself. But if I say that I can heal and help others heal with the passing and redistribution of energy without needing to evoke Reiki, then that's what'll be true. So I think that we as individuals have lost, due to our attachment to scientific explanation, we've lost a lot of ability and belief in our abilities that needs to come forward again. I think it's okay to have scientific explanation. In fact, I employ the scientific method a lot, but just because science hasn't caught it, named it, and cataloged it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just the problem that I have with science is that we were around before science. Our ability to grasp concepts and come up with ideas came before the invention of science. So I always feel like the natural instincts and abilities that we are gifted with are usually enough to solve problems, because they would have to be. It's what nature would assure of that, right? Nature would assure that you are equipped with the abilities to solve problems in a natural world. And so I feel like common sense is one of the 6 senses that we know of, but I feel like there's probably 30 senses that we just haven't tapped into. And things like when people we talk about intuition and deja vu, and you are literally getting glimpses into abilities that you have. But it's so crazy because just as we talk about this, as because I said I'm newer to the subject as well as far as experiences go. So it wasn't long ago where I would look at a healer and think that that's pretty wild to think about. Like, how is that can't be possible until it happened to me. Until I healed my animal. I didn't necessarily, it wasn't me, but I feel like I was the conduit. I've told Debs about this a million times. And I just have the example of where the statement of being able to heal others literally with just energy is a real thing. And it's just like, it's so mind-blowing once you start realizing that you have these things that you are totally unaware of.
Yeah, I mean, perfect example. You mentioned healing an animal. I have a dog. She's small. It's like a Chihuahua German Shepherd mix. If you want to figure out the geography there, or not geography, geometry, then, but she's like 27 pounds. And here in Arizona, we have toads that come out of the ground at certain times of the year, and they're actually like, people lick them and have psychedelic experiences and stuff. It's called the Sonoran toad. But if your dog gets a hold of one, the stuff that it secretes on its skin can be deadly for small animals. And my dog got a hold of one. And I really immediately rinsed her mouth out with soap, or not soap, but water, and started rushing her to an ER vet. And I mean, she was like not, she was whimpering. She had no mobility in her limbs. Like she was, I think, out, on her way out the door. And on the way to the ER vet, I Reiki'd her. This is before I started to realize that I could use any energy, but I Reiki'd her. I felt it flow through me. I felt it flow down my arm and into her. And by the time we got to the ER vet, she was up, wagging her tail, prancing around inside the waiting room like nothing had happened. Now, I still had her checked out just to be sure. But yeah, they came back and said, she's perfectly fine. We can find nothing, none of the poison or whatever is left in her body. We did some blood work, nothing's there, blah, blah, blah. So bottom line, it does work. And you all the only restrictions you have is whatever you place on your own abilities.
And there's a scary part to that too, because the more you realize that you have these other abilities just unknown, it could be countless. There could be hundreds. We just don't know. And it could be ones that could potentially be used for not the best purposes. And what comes to mind is you think of like the traditional superhero who has these superpowers and then they turn evil. Elon Musk, cough, cough. But just like a real superhero that uses now their powers for evil. Like, I wonder if they're, because a lot of people talk about frequency and how your vibration needs to be high. So I wonder if you're even able to tap into those abilities for nefarious purposes. Like remote viewing is one right now that is a lot of people use. So I wonder if your intent was nefarious for using remote viewing, would you be able to do it, or would you not? I guess that'd be something we could test out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting concept. That, like, for things like Reiki, I don't think you could, because Reiki, like, the first tenet is kind of like a doctor. Do no harm. Whatever you do, make sure it's all in good intentions. Heal yourself. Heal your friends. So I don't think you could use, Reiki or healing in a negative way. Like, I don't think you could reverse it and use it to hurt someone. But, remote viewing or something like that would be interesting to know. I mean, kind of when you think about the remote viewing programs that the US government had, and I'm sure Russia and other countries had in the 70s, they were using them to effectively spy on other countries. And so although they weren't using them to inflict harm, they were using them for kind of nefarious purposes. That was to gain information about their adversaries, right? And so I think in that regard, because you're not really using it to inflict pain, but you're using it to acquire information, maybe that's where it's different. Where remote viewing is not remote acting, I guess is what I'm saying. You're not remote viewing a missile silo and then causing it to explode, in the mountain or whatever. That's never, that we know of, been documented as being a thing where you could remote view and then cause some action to happen while remote viewing. That's, I think, where maybe the differentiation lies.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know. Maybe that's something that could be set up and tested as we uncover the abilities that we're showing to have, because I know it just explains a lot once you start understanding that maybe those abilities, that we do possess those abilities, because you've been in those situations where somebody walks in a room, you didn't hear them walk in, but you felt their energy, you felt it, them walk in, and you turn around and the person's standing right there. Or if someone is just staring at you and you just get the hairs on your neck stand up, you turn around and that person is looking at you directly in your face. And it's like you picked up on something that you didn't realize you were able to pick up on. So it would be amazing to test those things. And we got about 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's very much like what I was talking about kind of on the first hour of the show, where you have these different layers of your existence. And so when you walk into a room, your energy body precedes you.
And we'll go ahead and continue that part of the conversation right after this break with Josh Rutledge right here with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Remember, if you're going to go anywhere, make sure you come back and bring me some popcorn too. See you in a minute. All right, clear, and we are awesome. We got 5 minutes here. If you got anything you need to do, Josh, you can do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some water real quick. I'll be right back.
Yep. I'll drop him in the back for a minute. As we go ahead and take a look here, who else has come on in? Noah Hyde 72. Anyone heard of remote viewing 5 years ago? Noah, yeah, this goes back to Project Stargate. Look up Project Stargate, Noah Hyde 72. And the government was using it, which sounds bananas, right, on the surface, but they were using this tactic, employing it, and stated they had success with it, as a lot of people who currently do remote viewing say their success. I can't vouch for it because I don't know how to do it, never have experienced the feeling, but enough people have vouched for it that it's at least definitely something to consider and look into. Who else do we have? Scott Rosen, I don't know if I saw you earlier, but hey, thanks for coming on in. Let's see. Yes, Jessica Jones definitely was a great remote viewer. And still a friend of the show. Shout out Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress, wherever you are at. Shout out. Let's see who else we have. Blue Cruise tuned in. Hey all, thanks Blue Cruise for coming on in. Who else do we have here? Cat Tongue 96. Thanks for coming on in. Christine Lynn, I see you out there. Tree Bird, I see you, Tree Bird. Zowzy Zowie. I'm just gonna say that's what your name is. It probably isn't, but let me know if I'm right or wrong. But thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you. And started listening to Art Bell in 95. Same stories getting passed around. That's true. It's all we have. We only have historical accounts, and we probably would have more if the stigma wasn't there and people weren't, afraid to come out with their stories. We'd have a lot more, and that's why we do shows like these, so that people, get the courage to one day come out and tell their own stories. I actually do a show called My Experience with the Phenomenon, which encourages actually that exact thing. So if you haven't, go ahead and check my channel out, youtube.com/@MrRobG. And we have shows where you yourself can come up, talk about your experience with the phenomena. We have late night call-in shows. We have now a definitive UFO news show. A lot of stuff going on over there. We'd appreciate you coming over and hitting that sub button, as well as sub to Josh Rutledge. He has a YouTube channel as well, Mystic Journeys, right?
Yep, Mystic Journeys or Mystic Journeys 44 if you look for the handle.
So definitely do that, guys. We would both appreciate it. Baywatcher 2, I see you out there. Thanks for coming in. Stargazer, thanks for coming in. Sierra, hi Sierra, thanks for coming in. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So we're looking good here. And Hillbilly Herb. This guy is insane. Did you see the private chat?
Yeah.
This guy, Banky, something else, man. Oh, speaking about those toads, though, it's funny because we have those toads here. I'm in California, And I'm in the desert, literally. Bakersfield is in the desert, is real close to Mojave. And, we get these toads. We've been seeing them for the last few years come out of nowhere. There is no water anywhere close. So it was like, where in the world are these things coming from? Huge toads. But I'm glad that you told me that story, because often our dogs will, encounter them. They're mostly afraid, but we have one dog in particular that might go and try to do something to one of those toads. One got in the house the other day. I had to get him out, but
when I had my thing happen with my dog, I found out that they don't like red or yellow light. So I actually changed my light bulbs in my outdoor lighting from like my security lights to be red. And since then, I've not had any toad issues.
I'm going to have to do that. Because you'll be in the backyard and you'll just hear leaves rustling. And you're like, what in the world is that?
They're big. They're like that big around,
All right, here we go.
All right.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio after hour number 1.5. Once again, we're at the point where we only have 20 minutes with our guest. That's crazy. Josh Rutledge is in the building, talking all sorts of stuff here. Paranormal, cryptids, consciousness is what we've been mostly talking about. You guys, if you missed any of it, hop in the archives, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Get yourself up to speed, because we will have the after hours wrap up in hour 3 with Drew Banky, and we will be discussing what we talked about tonight. As we go ahead and get back into the conversation. Also, anyone out there who has questions for Josh, make sure that you put them in caps. I'll keep an eye out for them as we go ahead and jump in. I had a question for you, Josh, because it's stated that you have expertise as a MUFON Field Investigator. And it's just funny that I didn't think about that yesterday when I was having a talk with Preston Dennett, Dolly Saffron. But during our conversation, there was a statistic that I wanted to run by someone who deals with MUFON. And that was, has there been in the last 2 years that you know of any decrease in UFO activity around the world?
So I can only speak for Arizona, because that's the state that I operate in. But I will say that reports are down in Arizona. So I don't know if that equates to a decrease in activity or a decrease in reporting that activity. But we've actually seen a trend down in people logging reports with MUFON. Now I know that there are some new players, let's say, in the field of making reports and logging reports, like that Enigma Labs and stuff like that. So I don't know if people are logging them at New Fork or new Enigma Labs, and so therefore they're not logging them at MUFON. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, I think if you were to, which I know Enigma Labs doesn't make their reports public for people who report there, but if there would be some way to compare, last year with just MUFON, or maybe MUFON, New Fork, Enigma Lab, all the different places where you can report stuff, and then again this year, maybe the reports have leveled out, even though there's less coming into MUFON because they're logging them other places.
All right, that makes sense. And let me ask you a second part to that question. Being that they're down, and I maybe think down might have been the wrong way to ask it, because things are going to go up and down, and it's all about perspective on how much down have they gone. Mm-hmm. The reason why I asked without asking the actual question is just it had been brought to my attention that maybe the extraterrestrials who had come here, or who we have been experiencing coming here, have kind of gone off planet for the last 2 years. And I'm wondering if there's like a dramatic decrease in sightings to where they're almost to none, or
there's
just a slight decrease.
No, it's not a dramatic decrease. It's a slight decrease.
Okay.
Generally I would say this time of year, we would see an increase because it gets dark earlier. People are looking in the night sky. It could also be attributed, though, because a lot of the cases, I would say that, this time of year, because they get reported, again, for the same reasons that I just mentioned, maybe people are making themselves aware of what is in the night sky, right? So we don't have as many, let's say, false reports that are being reported because someone downloaded the Flight Radar 24 app on their phone, and when they see these lights in the sky, they're looking and saying, oh, nope, there's a helicopter right there, or oh, nope, there's an airplane. Or maybe they downloaded Stellarium or something like that, and they're looking to see, oh, that was the International Space Station that just flew over. So maybe people are becoming more informed about what's in the night sky, and so therefore not reporting the things that would have been classified as an IFO.
Great perspective on that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And okay, and so yeah, and that could be a cause for a slight decrease in reporting easily. And yeah, I was just trying to see because it there was a statement made that maybe extraterrestrials for various reasons were off planet for a couple of years and weren't here in the present day for reporting, because I'm thinking if that's the case, then reporting should reflect that. And if reporting doesn't reflect that, then likely we are still having activity here on the planet. So if people watched yesterday's show, they understand why I'm asking that.
And I would also say that, that hypothesis is a very narrowed view of the potential definition or explanation for what a UFO is, right? If you say UFO, let's just theorize and say UFO reports had gone down. An explanation could be that alien or extraterrestrial life had moved off to Europa. They're off having their holiday party or whatever on Europa. But it's also possible that the orbs that people see are decrease in their activity certain times of the year. Maybe they hibernate, as we talked about the possibility of them being living creatures. So there's any number of reasons why activity could drop off, and it not necessarily be because ET life has gone to another planet or whatever the case may be.
What did you think about 2024 as far as the phenomena in whole goes? How do you think 2024 has played out for the phenomena?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we had a good year of people looking up. Did we necessarily find out any truths? I don't think so. But did we see an increase of people willing to look up at the night sky and report, whether it be to MUFON, Newfort, Enigma Labs, their local TV station, whatever the case may be, that was the case? I mean, the whole New Jersey drone situation, whether it be about drones or the orbs that were in the sky at the same time, the fact that so many people looked up, were willing to look at it. We had, local news stations in New Jersey train their weather cameras on drones as they were flying around. That was the attention that it garnered. So if all that happened, again, with my understanding of the purpose of the phenomena being to get you to rethink the possibilities, rethink your reality, if all that happened is that 2,400 additional people were willing to wake up and realize that there may be something else that exists out there that we haven't captured, caught, and cataloged, then it was a win, in my opinion.
I agree. And I'll say this again, as I believe I said this yesterday, but I just, it's really hard to get everyone to focus on one thing at one time. When we talk about globally, the only time that we've had the opportunity to do that was during the COVID period, where everyone had to stop what they were doing and everyone was indoors. You couldn't get distracted by little menial things, and so everyone at one moment was able to focus and absorb information as one unit. And once COVID passed and, I started having these realizations about what was going on, I was like, that was the perfect period of time to kind of lay it on people that the phenomena is real. And I was like, will we ever have another time like that where we have the focus of the world to be able to do that? And then we have this drone situation, which ended up being exactly that, an opportunity to have everyone's attention at one time about things that are in the sky that don't make sense, and then have those people asking questions, and it really bringing out the emotion in people who wouldn't have normally even discussed this topic. So I agree with you.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was saying I agree with you.
I do think, though, even though we had news stations that were covering the topic, and like I mentioned on Dave's we were talking about the wrap up for 2024 last week, even though they didn't play the X-Files theme song, which is a step in the right direction, it would have been, I think, a big step in the right direction if, when they had their experts on to talk about the phenomena or the drones or what they could be, if they would have included people in the scientific space that are open to the possibilities that they were something other than piloted drones. Because all the expert testimony that I saw from the various TV and radio stations were debunkers, and they were unwilling to admit to the possibility that there may be something going on that is outside of their level of understanding. I think that if we have another situation where it happens like this again, where we have this big flap, if you will, of activity, I would hope that they would ask people to come on who are still reputable in the scientific community, but also are willing to admit that there are things that happened that we are not aware of.
Yeah, I did a conversation about that. There's when we talk about skeptics and then non-skeptics, whatever side you fall on, there's an extreme side to both. Extreme skeptics are not open to hearing anything but UFOs are not real. That's all they believe. And technically, hard skeptics are actually believers, even though they like to use believers as a derogatory term for us in ufology. I don't really like the word believers, but there are two separate extreme sides that do not have open minds. There are non-skeptics that just, believe anything anyone says. And I think there's a danger to that. Yeah, you may know that the phenomena is real, but you should still vet everything that comes through. You shouldn't just take, because you've seen it yourself, now you take every story as fact. And that goes to what you're saying there, is that the people that really make the conversation move forward are those open-minded people, regardless which side of the conversation you fall on. And I'll tell you what, there was a thing that, because I like skeptics, and I invite skeptics in to this show. I want skeptics in the audience, but open-minded skeptics, ones that if they hear a good point, they're like, yeah, I could see that. I could understand that. And then kind of take that into the thought process. I will say that normally, just in that skeptic community in general, with other things that have come out or happened when it was strictly ufology related or UFO related, right after an incident happened, the skeptics would go crazy and they go into debunking mode, and they do shows on why this isn't real or true. But during this drone situation, even they were a little perplexed and wondering what was in the sky. Even they, and if they'll admit it or not is something else, but I've seen it, and I've seen in the moment they didn't have a lot to say, and they still don't have a lot to say, because I think the fear was instilled in them as well, that, hey, there are some things up there that no one seems to have an answer for. So I think it was great on the angle we talked about because of the focus of those who wouldn't normally look at it, but it was also great, to kind of give these skeptics food for thought, or give them a moment of thought. And I think that was great to see in 2024.
Yeah, I will agree. And I think it's interesting because we were talking earlier, I think, about, the need to, to tune in to see some of the phenomena. On my YouTube channel, as a part of a podcast that I was doing, I interviewed an atheist on, to get their take on the phenomena. And it was a fantastic conversation. But after the show, I have a picture, the best picture I've ever taken of a spirit. And I showed them that picture, and they could not see anything in the picture. They could not, like, I took my mouse and I circled around the area and they couldn't see anything. And I think it's because they basically turned their radio off, right? If you use that frequency tuning in perspective, they turned their radio off. They were unwilling to listen to or tune in to anything of the regard. And so they couldn't see it even when it was right in front of them. And so I think the danger of a lot of these so-called skeptics, I think it's okay to be skeptics, right? But there's a difference between being a skeptic and being a debunker. If your sole purpose is to prove that something can't exist, I don't know how you prove that, because you can't prove a negative, but if your sole purpose is to prove it can't exist, then you're not approaching the topic with an open mind. You're not being honest with yourself or your audience.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, I just think 2025 hopefully is going to bring some good things to the table. What do you foresee or hope for resolution for you for 2025 as far as the phenomena goes?
You know, I honestly don't think we're going to see a lot of things in 2025. I think it's going to be a continuation of this kind of slow ramp up that we've seen over the last probably 6 years. But I have been, so for those that don't know, I do some channeling and some work with dowsing rods and things, talking with various spirits and entities. And so on that side of the house, the year that I've been given is 2026. And so that's the year that I think we're going to see some big movement, maybe even open contact level movement on the topic.
Yeah, it's got to happen eventually. That's the only thing I hate about dates, is that because when they come and they go, then you have skeptics that say, you said this particular year. And I just like to look at it as it's a date that we know is coming. And here's what I'm looking forward to and hoping for. I'm just hoping that, there stops being the split. I'm hoping at least the situation that we're just going through now, shows both sides of the conversation that we're not actually opposing each other. We're actually on the same team, whether you're a skeptic, open-minded, or non-skeptic. The end result is that the whatever comes of contact, whenever it happens, affects everyone on both sides of the conversation. So I think the sooner that we can get to the point to where we understand that, the more fruitful the conversations can be. Because I just don't see a reason for UFO shows to only have a UFO believer viewer base. It just doesn't make sense, because you're missing a whole other side of the conversation. So hopefully a lot more shows start taking that into account. We got to start bringing people together, and I'm hoping 2025, now that we've gone through this experience, kind of awakens that in people and allows us, and even the news outlets that refuse to cover UFOs were forced to cover the drone situation. And at least they were also seeming disturbed and asking questions. So 2025 hopefully is an open media year where every news outlet takes a story serious that comes across their desk, and that we could have this conversation with the skeptics on a table in a fruitful, forward-moving conversation.
I think, the biggest defining factor is if you want to progress the conversation in any way, shape, or form, the people involved have to at least admit or be willing to admit the possibility of it being something other than terrestrial, right? If they can just admit the possibility, enter the conversation with the openness to discuss the possibility, then whether they come away from that conversation agreeing that it was a UFO or not, it doesn't matter, because they entered the conversation with the openness and willingness to consider that it's something other than extraterrestrial origin.
Yeah, and if I could get a group, and maybe and see, that's the thing, being in a position where we're able to talk to people, hosting shows and that things of that nature. My own personal resolution for 2025 is to get out and be more active in outside of a show and trying to manifest some of those gatherings and meetings of the minds where we could sit down and actually have these conversations. Because I think if you had the opportunity to get a really good group of skeptics, open-minded skeptics, and then believers in a room to have this conversation, and then you just break the ice with possibility, and then understanding that, hey, we are sitting on a rock, spinning rock, traveling through space, spinning around this fireball in this infinite thing called space. Like, just breaking the ice with that sort of realization is something that we all know, and is still really strange to try to digest. And just, if we could start there, then I think the conversation opens up a lot more, because you hear like Captain Kirk, what's his name? I forget his name. Captain Kirk, Star Trek. William Shatner. So he goes into space and he has this revelation, this moment of understanding that everything we've done and do is on that little rock right there. Yep. And it kind of puts everything into perspective. And I think once you could achieve that same feeling in other ways. And so that's kind of my resolution for 2025. Hopefully I could do that with a group of people. And
I think the more that we can work towards shifting that perspective, the better off we'll be, because frankly, as a society, we treat this planet like we can just hit the reset button, or, it's like, we're going to get a redo on Downs or something like that, or there's another planet close by we can just jump to if this one goes to crap. But that's not the case. And maybe if we all had more of that, kind of shift in perspective, whether or not it's aliens or not, the fact that, this is the only planet that we can inhabit, and we can no longer treat it like a pile of crap all the time if we expect to live here, or if we expect our grandchildren or their grandchildren to still have a planet to call home.
That is absolutely right, Josh. It has been an awesome conversation. Spend some time here. We got about 2 minutes left. Spend some time telling people where they can find you, talk about your podcast, what it's all about.
So YouTube channel, Mystic Journeys, or youtube.com/@MysticJourneys44. On the channel, I've got a podcast. I've got some other stuff that I've done with dowsing rods. It's an interesting thing that I'm kind of dabbling with. I'm working on some experiments to try to improve the efficiency, let's say, or the accuracy of what comes through on dowsing rods. So if you're going to look for that stuff in the future. And I'm actually getting ready to start a podcast with Debs. Debs and I are going to collab on a podcast called Transcendence, where we're going to have a lot of kind of similar conversation we had here today, but also more around, consciousness and things like that. And so be willing to check out that channel, look for Transcendence, the podcast. Going to come out probably later in January, and then an episode every 2 weeks. You can also go to mymysticmentor.com if you're interested in having me be a mentor for you in any way, shape, or form, whether it be to help you get your business off the ground, or just want to understand, you've had an experience and you don't really know how it relates or translates to your everyday world. I can help you walk through and help you understand and uncover what that means. So mymysticmentor.com. Thank you, Rob, so much for having me on. It's been a fantastic show. You decide you want to get that skeptic group, non-skeptic believer, whatever you want to call it, debate thing going, give me a holler. I'd love to come on and talk with those guys or people or whoever they are. So
done deal, Josh. Awesome stuff. I can't wait to see the work you and Debs do. I love Deb. She knows that. Shout out Deb Shakti. We're gonna definitely do that. We got to do things to move the needle, Josh, and I feel like you're a guy that feels the same way. With that being
Absolutely.
said, man, thank you for coming in. Have a great rest of your night. And everybody else, make sure you don't go anywhere because we're coming back with hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, clear. Josh, thanks for coming in, man. I'm going to run this commercial. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Take care. All right, welcome back, ladies and gents, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, after hour number 3. So we got about 15 seconds before we come back from radio. Let's get it in. All right, everyone, welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, after hour number 3. With your host, Mr. Rob G. We want to thank our guest, Josh Rutledge, for coming in and having an awesome conversation, hours 1 and 2. If you missed it, archives, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Catch up on what you missed. Also, we're going to be getting into some really good stuff this hour with Drew Banky and the After Hours wrap up, and the man with the stories, Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Unexplained, invisible, or cloaked being / humanoid. When I was about 5 years old, I was playing by the edge of the woods behind my grandmother's house. I played there often, and my grandmother just kept an eye on me from the kitchen or living room because the house had huge windows that faced the woods. She would come out every once in a while just to see what I was up to. I was obsessed with digging in the dirt and collecting unusual rocks and arrowheads that littered the land where my grandmother lived. I should mention this is Midwest Illinois, not too far from Cahokia Mounds, so finding arrowheads was actually not that uncommon. Anyway, that day, I remember picking out a spot to dig. I'd been out there for quite a while because I remember I had a pretty decent-sized hole going, but something caught my eye up in the tree that I was next to. I almost don't know how to explain it, but it looked like almost a heat wave coming off the branch of the tree. It was fall. I remember this because I had my pink jacket on and remember thinking my mom was going to be pissed because I had dirt around the bottom of the arms from digging. I also remember there being a lot of leaves on the ground. Anyway, I'm staring at this heat wave and realize it has a human shape. So here I am, 5 years old, and wondering why there's an invisible man in the tree. I remember feeling scared but unsure of what to do. Then it started moving and making a faint clicking sound. This is about the time that I decided that I was not supposed to be seeing this, and I hightailed it back to the house. My grandmother saw I was pretty shaken, and I remember telling her that I just saw an angel. In my 5-year-old mind, I didn't know what else it could be. I'd never heard of aliens or ghosts or monsters, so to me it had to be an angel because that's all my little mind could think of. Fast forward to when I was about 12 years old. By this time, the encounter was way out of my mind. I loved watching action and sci-fi movies. My dad rented a movie called Predator. I'm watching it with him, and the first time you see the Predator, invisible / cloaked, I about shit my pants. All the memories from that day digging in the dirt came flooding back. I even asked my dad if Predator was real or if he knew of anyone or any animal that had cloaking ability that I didn't know about. He told me it was all fake. It wasn't like it is today where I could just Google it. I had no access to the internet, so again, I just put it out of my mind. Again, fast forward to about the year 2004. I'm grown now. I have 3 small children. I just went through a separation from my husband. I moved to the next town over to an apartment with my kids. These apartments are all one-level duplexes, with there being 5 buildings. I'm at the very last apartment of the last building. The apartments are considered in town, but are on the outskirts. There's a deep ditch that runs behind the buildings with a chain-link fence that separates the backyard from the ditch. There's about 6 or 7 trees on our side of the fence. And if you follow the ditch a little bit, you hit a small forest that eventually leads to the country, with a larger forest and farmland. I'm a smoker, but would not smoke in the apartment because of the kids, so I often went out to the back porch. One night I was up late doing laundry and stuff after the kids went to bed. I decided to take a smoke break before I myself went to sleep. So I'm back there on the porch and I started hearing this faint clicking sound. I immediately looked to the ditch because I'd seen a groundhog out there a few days before and thought perhaps he was out there again. The yard is faintly lit from the outside light that's by the playground that is to the right of my back porch. I didn't turn on my porch light. I didn't normally if I was just going out for a quick smoke. I didn't see any groundhog or movement from the ditch, so I go back to smoking my cigarette. The faint clicking sound keeps happening, and a slight shift of movement makes me look up into the tree to the left of my porch. It's there. The same invisible thing I'd seen when I was 5. It's like a distortion and in a humanoid shape. It's crouched down on the branch with an arm out holding onto the trunk of the tree. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is this happening? Has it come to kill me from me seeing it all those years ago? All I could think about was my kids in the apartment sleeping. I ran in and slammed and locked the door. I ran to the kids' room and made sure all the windows were locked. Then I just turned out the lights in the living room and stared out the blinds at the tree to see if I could catch another glimpse of it. I sat there for a good 10 minutes and couldn't see anything. I began to think I was just tired and my mind was playing tricks on me. Just as I was finally talking myself down, a neighbor's dog comes running across the yard and starts barking at the tree at the same branch that I'd seen this predator thing on. That pretty much freaked me out because this dog was not a barker. I've actually never heard him bark at anything, even at the groundhog that had been hanging out at the ditch. This barking went on for a few minutes until I hear the neighbor lady who owns the dog call him back inside. The dog reluctantly turned to go back home, stopping every few feet to look back at the branch of the tree until he was out of my sight. I didn't sleep that night and have never seen anything like it again. I don't know what to think of it. I'm a grown woman. I have kids and a good career. I just want to know if anyone else has ever had an experience like this. I know what I saw, believe it or not. Also, just a strange little side note about my obsession with digging when I was younger. I had an uncanny ability to just know where to dig for stuff. Like I said, I used to dig up arrowheads and unusual rocks and geodes all the time. It was kind of strange. I remember this one time I was fishing with my dad, and when we got back to the camp, I just started randomly digging in a meadow off to the side of the camp. I dug up a whole bunch of marbles. It was weird. They were all pretty deep, too. My dad was pretty amazed by it. Thanks for taking the time to read this. Anonymous. I'm not sure what happened to me in the woods. I don't know if this is the same kind of stuff, but someone said I should post this here. Okay, so I know this is going to sound crazy, and honestly, I've spent a long time reading stories on here and called BS on stories half as crazy as what happened to me. I'm no writer, so I apologize in advance if I don't explain this well. I love creepy stuff and spend a lot of time listening to stories on YouTube and reading them here and various other places. A friend of mine came to me because she knows I love stuff like this and told me she had a strange experience the other night with her boyfriend where she parked near a woods on the edge of town, and just as they were about to start fooling around, something made a creepy giggling noise from the woods. Her boyfriend got out and threw stones into the woods, thinking someone was playing a prank or something. She said he shined his phone light into the woods, and they both saw what looked like tiny people scattering back into the woods. I asked how tiny. She said about the size of her dog, which is a little white fluffy thing. I'm not sure what the type is, but they're really small dogs. I drove up to the woods that night to check it out and parked near where she said she parked, but didn't hear anything. So after a while, I got out of the car and went into the woods to look around. I didn't want to go far in, and I swear I took less than 20 steps into the woods when I heard a laugh. It sounded like a little girl, but off. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but I spun around and pointed my torch to where it had come from, and there was nothing there. Then, as I was looking around for what had made the sound, I realized I was really far into the woods, like seriously far in them, and I couldn't see my car or even the road. I know I hadn't walked that far. I was confused as hell, and when I went to head back the way I came from, I wasn't even on a path. I weirdly didn't panic, though I remember being what I would call drunk calm. Like when someone kicks off a problem in a bar, but you've had a few, so you just have no reaction to it. Like part of you knows you should be reacting, but you're just not. I just looked around and started walking in what I felt was the right direction. But the more I walked, I felt like I was dazed, and I kept thinking it was because it was so hot. It was pretty late at night, so it shouldn't have been. But I felt like I was on a beach on holiday somewhere, and I just kept thinking I need to cool down to clear my head, so I started stripping. I'm seriously not the kind of girl who just strips off, by the way. Like, I'm not shy, but I don't do stuff like that. But my head was just fuzzy, and I was convinced I'd feel better if I took everything off. I was just dropping everything as I walked. I even dropped my torch, as I just felt like my eyes would see better without it. I don't fully remember what was going on after that. I felt like I was walking for ages, like everything just felt like a dream. But I felt comfortable. Even though I was naked, I still felt like it was really warm. I don't know where I was, but I remember finding a small pond and trying to cool off by splashing the water over my head and then sitting on the edge and dangling my feet in the water. It felt deep, like I was on the edge of a pool, like it was just a straight edge going down, even though it looked like it was a little more than a large puddle. I remember it being really nice and cold when I felt a hand around my ankle and then a second one around the other. Everything still just felt normal, though, like I was thinking I should slide forward and lower myself in the water because it was so nice and cool. Like even trying to remember it all as much as I'm freaked out feels like just such a peaceful memory. I could feel the hands around my ankles, and I started laughing as something started tickling my feet. I'm not sure how long this went on for, but in my memory, it feels like it was happening for hours. I was just giggling and thinking about getting all the way into the water. I'm not sure what broke me from my daze, but I feel like someone else was there who said something to me. I remember pulling my feet out of the water, the hands letting go without a fight, and then turning around and walking away. Everything is blank, though, after I started walking away. The next thing I remember is being back in my car, suddenly very, very uncomfortable about being naked and starting to panic. I seriously have considered going back in the woods to find my clothes, but thankfully decided against it, as I imagined the few awkward moments getting home were better than risking the woods again. I have no idea what to think about what happened, and I'm pretty sure no one is going to believe me, but I had to tell people about this. I mean, has anyone experienced things like this before? Thank you, Anonymous.
All right, that is Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries, always bringing us the heat, and we do appreciate Steve Stockton being a part of the After Hours radio show right here on Spaced Out Radio. And with that being said, that means it's time to go ahead and jump into the After Hours wrap-up with our guy, Drew Banky.
You're an irredeemable monster!
Come here, I'm gonna eat you! Get in my belly!
Kick it in the north! Kick it in the north! Do it! Wolfman's got north! You're a monster!
Oh man, I just love music so much. I love having these musical bumps. Welcome, Drew Banky, to the After Hours wrap up, man. Glad to see you back here on the last After Hours show of 2024. How are you doing, sir? You're muted, but I'll unmute you if you.
There we go. It's been an honor, man. It's been an honor coming on to be a part of Space Out Radio this year. And yeah, looking forward to next year. And yeah, just happy to be here. I disagree with everything Josh was saying. Obviously, nothing hit home for me, anything that he said. But no, all jokes aside, everything that he was saying, it's just like looking in a mirror. And yeah, the whole Bufo thing is crazy.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
But
we've talked about that Bufo thing, and things may or may not be set up. Allegedly, we'll use words like that for 2025. So I look forward to maybe connecting with Drew Banky allegedly and doing alleged things. So go ahead. You could. I just wanted to say that.
yeah, no, it's I'm open. My side, I'm open to talk about it for sure. I got been working today behind the scenes, getting stuff set up for Joshua Tree coming up the first weekend in February with ayahuasca. So let me make sure what the date is. Yeah, so the weekend, the 7th and 8th of February, are being Joshua Tree. There's seats still open. You can look for a flyer. I'm gonna be posting a flyer tomorrow on my social pages, and definitely on the website. Maybe not on my social pages, but on the website. And if you're interested and you're feeling the call, step forward. There's still seats available. It will sell out. It will book out. It's already halfway booked. So yeah, but
awesome.
I'm looking forward to 2025, man. Everything that Josh was saying was hitting home to me so hard. Working with Debs too. I got a deep appreciation, and we've had some very intimate moments in ceremony. Me leading ceremony for Debs. So yeah, it's just the circles. The circles are happening, and I was in meditation in the backstage, and when that was going on, and I was actually in meditation with Bufo Various, the toad he was talking about. And when I come back on air, when I come back on air and got back to listening, that's right when he was talking. And I snapped a picture of what was going on in my office and sent to Rob so he could timestamp it and go back and check it later. But
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, guys. The spirits at work and the questions that I was asking and stuff in that meditation, it was pretty crazy. So yeah, I got caught. I decided to do a little show and tell today for people that can see the camera. People that are on the radio, I'm holding up my medicine, part of my medicine jewelry. This particular one is made by Alice Gray. It's an Alice Gray design. The beadwork is not Alice Gray, but it's an Alex Gray design. So it's basically blasting open the third eye. People you can't see on the radio. It's an Alice Gray piece where it's like 3 heads pointed in each direction, and then like the top of his head is open where the third eye is open up. It's a beautiful piece, and this is what I wear in ceremony. So I was kind of guided to do a show and tell tonight. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. You were messaging me backstage, and I just couldn't help but laugh, dude. I was just cracking up, like, dude, this is Drew, man. But yeah. What's the experience?
Well, I don't know. Just I got centered. I've been really nervous about this interview coming up, about leaving for Vegas in a couple days. Got this retreat coming up, and that always makes me nervous because I want to provide people that go into ceremony with me with the best experience. So leading up to it, I will do ceremonies for myself, maybe not full blown ceremonies, but just enough to like meditate with something, a microdose of bufo. Not, obviously if I did a full dose, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, but it's just like a microdose and set with it, and it aligns me and brings me back into center. And that's basically what it is, and I was asking about my connections, if I'm doing the right thing, and if I'm in the right spot. And it's funny, when I come back to the show, it was a very clear message. I'm right where I need to be. So I'm glad to be here.
And it's a good way to wrap up the year. When I think about what, as we always talk about, what the mission is for this show and the message to get out and the type of conversations to have and what the whole outlook is, I just feel like we're finishing the year on a strong note. And it just makes me feel really good about raising the bar for next year. Like we did what we did this year. We accomplished what we accomplished this year, and we have to somehow find a way to raise that bar next year. And I'm up to the challenge, and I can't wait. That means a lot of new conversations with people that they have not heard from, and who matter to the conversation, as well as I talked to Josh about getting a group together of skeptics and both sides of the conversation, and really having one of those good, deep, tough conversations. You know what I mean? Are you willing to be a part of something like that?
Of course. If I got the time, I'm always there. It's about the conversation is the work, and the what keeps coming through to me anytime I do a meditation, whether it be with any medicine or not, just a regular meditation, what always comes back is, the real work is inside you. It's not anywhere else. It's not in politics. It's not setting up, cleaning up the oceans or anything like that. And all that is good. I'm not denouncing any of that work, the cleaning up the oceans and all that, but the real work is inside yourself. Like center yourself, like find yourself, and it's within yourself. So that's having these conversations and figuring out your own truth. That's a huge part. But these little things, when the stars line up and they show you really clearly in your face that spirit's present, and spirit's always present. When what Josh was talking about, the cones in the eyes, and butterflies having more cones than us, and seeing possibly seeing other things that we can't see because they're seeing a different spectrum. There's a lot of truth in that. And I think there's a lot of talk about guardian angels, or what some would call guardian angels, whatever you want to call it. I believe there's something like that around us all the time, and all you have to do is ask to be shown, and it'll be shown. It's I've had so many things happen throughout my path that has showed me that there is outside force in hand. And this is another thing. This is another show and tell thing. So this is what they call a Romulan ring. So watch this. So it folds down into a ring, that whole thing, and then unfolds. Like, people that are watching on the radio, a Romulan ring, it's like I don't know, it's all a bunch of rings inside of each other. I think it's a Romulan ring. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, but there's a very interesting story around this. We were traveling years ago, when we used to travel around the States and do ceremonies. So we basically, we had no time at home a lot. We were traveling a lot. And man, I was driving, I was like meditating, and I was kind of like almost channeling something, not like verbally, but I was hearing like a message come through, like a download. And I was like, man, if this is real, like, leave me a sign. And we stopped at a rest stop shortly after that, within, half hour of me having that thought. And when Ella walked up to the bathroom, she come out, and this was in the path of the bathroom that she just walked through, and it wasn't there. And then she walked back, and this was there.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing right there. And I think I haven't graduated to the, because I'm listening to that, I haven't graduated to the talking to the phenomena side of this conversation yet. But we're going to go to break here. We got 5 seconds as we get ready to go to our last final break of the night. Already right here on the Space Star Radio After Hours Radio Show with me, your host, Rob G. That's Drew Banky right there. And we'll be back right after this break. All right, we are clear. Clear. Great show tonight. MJ, thanks for coming in. Any other new names? James J12.
Polly, how you call?
Yeah, Polly Rotterman, obviously.
Showing up.
Polly. And I
prayers out to you, Polly. I just want to take a minute, Rob, say a prayer for Polly. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in her neck of the woods over there, especially right now. And just prayers for her and her family, that everything's protected and she's in a good place. I know she has a good heart and good soul. So I have no doubt that she's protected, but just a little bit of extra energy her way doesn't help, doesn't hurt anything. So
yep, healing energy back to Polly. I message her on the back end and send her words of encouragement all the time. She did ask a question for you, Drew, that we can have you answer during the break. Drew, do you know where she can find a serious ayahuasca group in her country? Please let her know. Wait, it's for a friend. Hugs.
I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I don't even know of a lot of people in the States. And they're starting to crack down, especially in other states. Like I just had a friend that has a church going in Florida, and they just acquired a really nice property and like a really big house and everything for their operation. And they got raided by DEA and everything, and they're having to go through the legal rigmarole. So yeah, it's like I don't know. It's like the powers to be are taking one last grab at staying in control. Ayahuasca and stuff like that, they represent like breaking out of the shell, and taking back your power in a very serious way if it's used in a proper way. Like that's a good important disclaimer to put on it. But all these things, if they're used in a proper way, they can be very, very helpful. They can be hurtful too, like if they're not used in a proper way. But but I don't know of anything there. I barely know of any in the States.
Yep. And we'll keep ear to the streets though, Polly, and anything comes through, we will shoot it your direction for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's needed there. So I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up there. I was listening to a podcast, Sean Ryan, and he was interviewing this preacher named Lee Strobel. And he was talking about how people in India and like in Muslim countries are having dreams that never even heard of Jesus, but are having dreams and Jesus are coming into their dreams, and they're being like told to change to Christianity and stuff like that. Like it's crazy. So there's a bunch of like documented stories out there. They were talking about is super interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to look into all that. They have I as far as getting into the whole religious spiritual side of the conversation, we have some stuff coming up in the new year. One of the favorites, everyone's favorite, Reverend Michael Carter will be here early in the year, I think early February. And there's some other people that I'm looking at too. Now, I'm going to throw this one out there because this person is from the other side of the globe, and we weren't really able to, we haven't begun really to set up. They asked to come on the show. So the person is Raelian Chief Rabbi Leon Ariel Malou, a renowned worldwide lecturer. Has something to do with a particular group. But if you are familiar with this person, you want to see this person on the after hours, let me know, because I would have to record it different time of day and play a pre-recorded interview for you guys. So if you're interested in that interview with Raelian Chief Rabbi Leon Ariel Mellul, Mellul. Let me know. Let me know. So we got about 20 seconds here. If you can give a quick answer, Drew, I don't know if you can. Drew, season greetings. Would you consider your DMT use a drug addiction?
No, I would not. It was, there's times when it's needed and there's times when, it's not.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, and Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap up. As we got about 20 minutes left in the show, we will go ahead and do what we need to do to get you through. We will see you through to the end of the show. Make sure if you missed anything that we've gone over, hop in the archives, youtube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. It's a plethora of stuff in there, as Dave Scott says. But we're going to go ahead and jump right back into the wrap-up before we get into some UFO weird news to end off the year. Drew Banky, anything else that you wanted to point out about the conversation that we had? We got into consciousness, paranormal, some of the usual things that we talk about. Anything that you wanted to add to that conversation?
No, it's just a great guest. I mean, he's he's obviously talking about a lot of things that I vibe with. So obviously, I was excited about that. But yeah, just his ideas of how consciousness works and frequency and vibration, things like that. It was spot on, and I loved it. I think it was a great guest. I don't have anything else to point out in particular. Some of the stuff he was talking about is some of the stuff I've talked about, especially about the butterfly things. So to hear him say it, and it's just interesting. So many things are connecting. Stuck out to me. I can't pinpoint any other ones other than really the butterfly thing was super interesting, and it's something that I've looked at too, and I totally believe in. This him talking about doing Reiki on his dog, and it's the energies between our hands, like that's something that our energy, I hope we focus on that more in 2025, and just opening, having more guests on that can really elaborate on that and really can articulate better than I can about how these things work, and how, because it is real, maybe I'm not always the best at articulating things or explaining it, but it is real. There's energies that come that we have in our bodies, and we can magnify them. We can raise them at certain times, and we need to look into that more, because that's the real evolution, the seeing everything and something landing in your front lawn. That's like a spaceship landing in your front lawn. But if you can understand like the energy that's within yourself and starting to harness that and use that, that's where the key's at now. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Why not?
Yeah, I think about that, and just the one day the full realization of our powers, like when you can just call upon a power, an ability, just call upon it because it's there and you know how to access it. you know how to utilize it. Just think of a time when that happens, when everyone is able to, on call, access one of those abilities. It's going to be crazy. And that's why I asked Josh, looking at that, like, do you think that could be ever something that could be used for evil, just like a superhero uses their powers once they're realized for evil? Could that be the same thing for us? Is that even possible? You know, they got into vibrations or frequencies. And, you know, I was stating that I thought, you know, maybe because it requires you to have a high frequency vibration, you know, and a lot of people hate when you use those words, but that's the only words I could use to explain what I'm trying to
though.
say.
I mean, it's true. Anyone that's meditated to a point of like transcendence, with or without psychedelics, like even if you meditate like rapid breathing, you know, like to get transcendent state, you start to vibrate, you know, that's your body starts to vibrate. That's when that's why there's so many cases of tinnitus. Like look at how many veterans have tinnitus, and look at how many civilians, you know, like people that haven't even served in the military have tinnitus. It's not tinnitus, it's the humming of the planets, the humming of the universe that we're starting to hear. And if you took psychedelics, like you know, like when you start to have a breakthrough on DMT, mushrooms, or anything, peyote or whatever it is, like when you go to have that full on breakthrough, like to the spirit realm or the ether, whatever you want to call it, it's a vibration that's it's a extreme case of tinnitus. It's a body vibration that you can feel that's within you, you know, coming from your center out. And so frequency and vibration is the only way to really describe. I think that's the correct way to describe it. You know, we're so in tune to saying, oh, I don't want to like be locked down to a certain term or that, but I mean, I think that's what it is. So I mean, there's no, you know, harm, no foul, because I think that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a raise in frequency and vibration. I think that's because there's so many different, you know, just a few different decibels or whatever it is, like a dog can hear and we can't hear, like and that's just on one sense, and that's just on a small part of the spectrum. The whole part of the spectrum on hearing goes way farther, you know, north and south. And same is true on eyesight, same is true on, you know, feeling, touch, smell. It's on all the senses, and also the senses like, you know, telepathy. You know, there's the telepathy files is super famous right now because Joe Rogan mentioned them on his podcast, and now the telepathy tapes is like the #1 podcast. But what they're talking about, like, but it's the universe bringing this information out. Like, it worked through Joe. He mentioned it for some reason. You know, he got he got turned out somehow. He was watching it. He mentioned it. And now everybody's, you know, a lot of people that wouldn't heard about it are now listening to this stuff. It's about kids with autism proving that they have telepathy. And some of the comments that they talk about are like, so you've been telling me like it's these kids with autism. The answer is no. We all have it. The only difference is these kids with autism and special needs are sometimes forced into using other senses and develop other senses that may lie dormant in us because we're too lazy. Like, we're too lazy because we're talking and texting and too wrapped up in it to really tap into telepathy. But it's there. And there's many other things, many other supernatural abilities that we're going to see. And yeah, these next couple of years are going to be lit, man.
And I'll tell you what, I'm thinking it's obviously, you know, cool to be able to think of once we get there, once we have those abilities, how things will be. It'll be so awesome, because it will be, to be able to just call upon, just to say, I'm just going to telepathically talk to you right now, Drew. Like, I'm just going to do that. And I know you're going to receive the message and you're going to talk right back. And we can do this at will when something like that is so amazing. But what's going to be even crazier is to contrast that, looking back on how we used to be and looking at how we were not even close to living up to our abilities, and then it's just going to really even sink in even further, and we're going to have there's going to be a collective dislike, I'll use, for the ones who suppressed it all this time. It's just going to be so revolutionary when we get to that point and we're able to look backwards like, man, see, I knew, like, we had so much more potential. We could have avoided this. This never had to happen. We didn't have to go into this situation unprepared. And we are, able to kind of look back on it and see everything for what it was, because I feel like with the government has kind of shown it in some cases that because they have done things like remote viewing and looked into other things that we could conceive as abilities that we have, untapped abilities, it's going to be a shame to know that the plan the whole time was for them to suppress the abilities of every human being on the planet. That's going to be just a mind blower.
No, it's not. It's not even suppressing, man. It's the mind blower that's really going to be. They haven't been suppressing it. They've been funneling it, because we don't. Most people don't know how strong it is, like their power of thought, like their willpower. That's how. Like when I was just talking to someone earlier today, they was talking about having a good podcast, and it was a friend of ours, the Animal Podcast. He made a post. He's like, I hope in 2025 or in the future, I hope I have a successful podcast. I said, all you have to do is say, I will, because that's willing it. The words, we're talking about word power, like it's very, very real. So taking it back to the powers to be, that's why they have national anthems. That's what, like, seriously, I'm not an anti-patriot. I'm a patriot for the people. I'm not a patriot for the government. I'm not a patriot for the powers to be. I'm a patriot for the people. But that flag, our pledge of allegiance, like, we're pledging allegiance every time we say it. We're giving our energy. They're not trying to suppress our energy. They're trying to farm our energy, which they have been doing successfully for probably, for a long time, since the revolutionary age and all that. Like, it's all ramped up, especially here lately. Within the past 20-30 years, they've really started to understand how consciousness works. Why you think all these programs are coming out, like these consciousness programs, the remote viewing on Mars stuff, like all that stuff is real. Like, they've been studying it. So now if you study it and understand it, and you're trying to control the masses, why wouldn't you use it to your advantage?
Well, see, the thing is,
through media and the movies and all that.
The thing is that they count on, they first of all, they plug you into the matrix, which is the society's bubble. And so you are literally engaged in some sort of meaningless activity for your entire adult life. Some people, like us and others, wake up and step outside the bubble and say, hey, wait, I'm not supposed to be plugged into this. But some people go their entire lives never knowing. They actually die in that system. And so when you have that those are the crimes against humanity that you'll look back on and say, that was a shame that they did that, because they literally put you in a system that they put together. There was no benefit to humanity as a whole, and it literally took lives away from people. We get to wake up early, before our time is up on this planet, and realize what is actually going on. But there's so many that have already passed and haven't never done, and people that are living right now that just can't do it. I've seen those worker bees that are more comfortable being plugged into that system instead of being more free thinking and stepping outside. And it's just because the system that has been designed is one that just naturally is suppressive to those abilities that we had. Because if we realized that we had access to those at a moment's notice, then we wouldn't allow ourselves to be plugged into a system. And so that's, when I say suppression, that's kind of what I mean, because we're going to look back on it, even though we know it's bad, that they're doing it right now is going to look even worse once we've realized what we are and who we are, and we look back on it. It's just going to be a shame. It's literally going to be bad. If we still have history books going forward, that's going to be in the books.
I truly believe that's why they've been suppressing the UFO thing, man. Like I truly believe I believe it's the relationship, it's the whole consciousness, because once the relationship starts to come out between ET and us, how connected we are biologically, spiritually, energetically, then the whole consciousness thing, can of worms starts opening up. Then they can't control us anymore, because like we use our own words to manifest our own reality at our own peace, within our family, in our community. And then our community starts to grow and grow, like not in a cult status, but that's why people are having all these visions, like, and homesteading is, so popular. It's a trending thing now. Living off grid, intentional communities. That's why all these things are coming out in these visions and these dreams, and people are really going out, buying the land and doing the thing. Like they're making their intentional community, because they're basically forming their own kind of government, in a way, a government with non-government, a community without government, in the eyes of an evolved race, evolved human. And I think that's what's happening, man. Like, Preston was talking about it last night, about how people are getting these messages to do homesteading, off-grid, things like that. I've had the same thing. I've had the same visions that said, don't be a prepper, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared a little bit. And once I started getting into it, once I started growing my own food and eating out of my own garden, and getting it, having the chickens now, and getting chicken eggs, and it's not 100% of the time. We still have to buy groceries from the store, but if you look at the general population, I bet we're in the top like 5% of people that eat from their own hands, like, butcher my own, and processing my own elk all the way from start to finish, all the way into the fridge, all the way to the frying pan, no one else touching it. Things like that. That's a spiritual experience, because what we're eating, even though it's food and it's a nourishment for our physical body to go through each moment, it was manifested by the creator, just like everything else is. And we're intaking it, it's all about perception, how you do these things, and growing your own food, harvesting your own meat, packing your own meat, things like that. And like, hunting, you don't even have to hunt. Like lots of times people will overhunt and stuff, and they're fine people to give animals to, things like that. We're on the call list for animals getting hit that don't have any damage to their body, like they got hit on the road, and instead of it going to waste on the road, we bring it back here and process it, what is good of it, and use it. I think it's a very spiritual thing. And people ask, like, well, I don't live on a homestead, I can't do off grid, whatever, but you can go get a tomato plant from Walmart or something like that, from the garden section, put it in a window and grow a tomato and eat that tomato. You're creating you just completed a cycle that many don't do. And it's very spiritual, just that alone, of just growing your own food, whether it just be one tomato or anything like that, and eating that. Just think about that cycle of self-sufficiency that's designed in us. It lays dormant in us because we've got so used to a grocery store. America's got about 2 weeks, if everything goes offline, of everything going haywire. The grocery stores are going to empty out within a couple hours. And not to be a fear monger or anything like that, but it wouldn't hurt to have some extra food. I know I have extra food in my place.
Now, with that being said, because we got a couple minutes for the show ends, go ahead and drop your 2025 resolution real quick before we get up out of here.
Yeah, man, just trying to do better, trying to be a better friend, better parent, and trying to move the needle, man, and trying to be a conduit for whatever's trying to talk through me and whatever is trying to communicate with the masses, and use me as that conduit, and just trying to be that hollow bone that is asked of me, along with being a better human, in general, in all aspects. And trying to get on bigger podcasts, bigger outlets, and that's all. I'm trying to take Spaced Out Radio to the moon.
All right. Well, it's been a great year, Drew Banky. I really appreciate your support and everything you do with and for the show, man. We're going to do more in 2025. I'm going to go ahead and get you out of here so I can speak to this audience for one last time this year, man.
All right,
enjoy
brother.
the rest of your night. Bring in the new year safely, man, and we'll talk soon.
See you next year.
All right, man. Take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Drew Banky in the After Hours wrap up. And so I kind of just want to spend some time with you guys, just one-on-one here, before we get up out of here. It's the end of the year. We spent time with each other last year. I came in Spaced Out Radio September of last year. So we were about 4 months in. We did the New Year's show, had a great time, brought in the New Year's together. I thought that was pretty awesome. I wanted to take it off this year, and I think I still might, because I definitely give up weekends, to do the show. So I never have a weekend to do anything outside of the show here, and New Year's as well. I usually am the one that steps up for the holidays and takes on those tasks as well. And I'm kind of on the fence because I want to have the time to myself, but I also feel compelled to, bring the message or have use the platform, for the good of you guys, because you guys are what makes this whole thing go. So you guys are like one of the most important parts of what happens here at Space Out Radio for the year of 2024. I just want to thank all the hard work that you guys have done out there in the audience and in the chat, and just being a part of the conversations that we have each and every night. A lot of intelligent individuals out there, a lot of great viewpoints, and I love to, engage with that. So I really appreciate having this community that we have here. You guys are special. Don't forget it. I hope you guys have some great New Year's resolutions and vision to shoot for this upcoming year. I hope, the ones you have for 2024 had come to fruition, or at least very close. And, just going forward, as I say on my own channel, I do this. The reason why I personally do this is I do this for the positive progression of humanity. That's the motto over at the Social Dig. That's why I do this, and why I might show up on New Year's Eve, because it's another opportunity to make that happen. So once again, I want to thank Josh Rutledge for coming on in tonight, having an awesome conversations for hours 1 and 2. I want to thank Steve Stockton for Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries, and of course our guy Drew Banky, the After Hours wrap up. I also want to thank the guy we're listening to right here, right now, none other than Ron Bubblefoot Dog. Yeah, he's the one rocking us out each and every weekend, as he tells us to never say never again. Because yes, the phenomena is real. And with that being known, that means anything and everything is possible. If you have love for the show, if you enjoy what we do here at the After Hours Radio Show, throw your horns up, let us know. Also, we want to thank you, the listener, and the viewers on terrestrial radio and digital platforms from whenever and wherever you may be listening from. It has been a pleasure serving you tonight as your host. I am Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And as far as the space travelers go, guys, this isn't a goodbye nor farewell. It is the end of the year, though. I hope you have a great new year as we move into 2025. and shoot to get those answers, the ones that we are looking for. Because we won't stand for another 80 years of obfuscation. We are moving the needle right here at the After Hours Radio Show. Thanks for coming in, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Take care. Right, we are clear. Let me go ahead and close. All right. Great show. Let me go ahead and shut this down here. And yeah, just I think we summed it up there, but definitely want you guys to know your curiosity, your intellect, your just ability to engage in the conversation intelligently is what makes this show so great. And I'm just so glad to be able to have conversations with like-minded individuals. We will continue to do this. I wanted to jump into some of the messages here. We had some great support tonight. So let me shout out the super chatters real quick. We had welcome to the show. 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 And welcome to the show. What is that? Seven super chats here tonight, super stickers. Thanks for your support. Welcome to the show. We also had Richard Minnick. We had Deb from Sacramento. We had Kira, who stepped in, checking us out. We had Dogface. We had Deb from Sacramento. Lavera Lucchini. Deb from Sacramento again, and Dogface again. And you guys are just, the support is so awesome. We do appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio and what it is that we do here. We will raise the bar for 2025. If I can guarantee you anything, the bar will be raised, and that's just what we do. So it's going to be an awesome time next year. I can't wait. Hopefully I see some of you guys out in Vegas 5 months out. Let's get ready. I got to get in the gym, get my little spring summer thing together, right? And I'll be seeing you guys out there. And as well, there was a comment, because I asked earlier about the rabbi, and I'll maybe spend a second just talking about how I was solicited by the rabbi. Sent this email and asked, pretty much soliciting to come on the show, which I don't have a problem with at all. But I want to make sure that this is a conversation you guys would like to hear. So I did have some messages back, and you guys were saying that you were interested. Ms. Catherine Jones as well stated she was interested in hearing the rabbi. So I'll have to try to arrange that. But like I said, it's during the week. It's not during our normal show hours, so it can't be live as far as at this moment. And it's only certain days of the week this can be done. So, I'm willing to definitely do that if you want that done. So I'm marking that on the list. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and rock up out of here, guys. We're going to get up out of here, and maybe you'll see a notification pop up for New Year's Eve. I just don't know. I can't commit to it at this point, not at this moment, but I definitely want you guys to enjoy the rest of your night. And let me make sure, let me see who Dave Scott has tomorrow on the show. I know he posted the show. Dave Scott has Lon Strickler. Good friend Lon Strickler will be in tomorrow night, so make sure you guys are here for that. 9 p.m. Pacific until midnight right here on Spaced Out Radio. Outside of that, we're going to rock out of here because we want retribution, guys, and that's how we're going to end the show. So if I don't see you New Year's Eve, I will see you in the new year, and just I hope everything happens that you want to happen, and great healing energy to out there, especially the Poly Ridermen and those affected by a lot of the negative things that are happening in the world right now. Much love. You guys all take care. See you later.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.